let's see what happens next. It's not going to be a question about like this dilemma of chicken or egg first, and we're not going to answer this, because if you want to dig into that, then Mr. Roster comes up, and then we need to answer like, how about the role of that person? But really, the question is that in your organizations, what do you do first? And just think about it while you're listening to me and watching the slides. Do you first decide to go agile or not, and then look into each and every project? Or do you look into every and each project and see the requirements for these projects and see what the required development approach is, and then decide to go agile or not? How many of you go with option A? So we don't have any agile teams here that you know yourself as agile teams and deal with every project as an agile project. That is fantastic if that's the case. How many of you go with B? And the rest are not doing project management apparently. Okay, so I just saw like 7, 8 hands up for the second option. But yeah, so I have seen that during the past 20 plus years that I've been teaching project management and doing and practicing project management, that nowadays some organizations, some teams tend to go agile. I don't want to be pessimistic, but in many cases I've seen that they just want to go agile because of the myths that they have heard about agile and about traditional project management. So they might think that, you know what, agile is a more modern, fancier way of doing project management versus traditional project management, as the name implies, is traditional. It is like, it's not the best way of doing that. But you might know this person. Does anyone know who this gentleman is? Okay, now that I show this hierarchy, you definitely will get to know Abraham Maslow's face from now on. You're not going to forget that. You all have seen this hierarchy, I'm assuming. This is the hierarchy of needs of Maslow, which is actually a masterpiece in the theories of management and in human resources, behavioral aspects of project management. I don't want to go into details of this, but when he was looking at this hierarchy, I noticed that even if when we want to get to that top level, self-actualization, and then like after we go into self-esteem, we need to start from basic needs. Like these physiological needs are the ones that we need to look into first before we can think about other aspects of life, of other aspects of team members and human beings. Then we can gradually get into the building relationships, and then getting into the phase that we can talk about trust, and then getting into a phase that we can say, okay, now we're going to be set for success. We're not going to start from top to bottom. What I mean by that is, in project environments, you cannot, or at least that's my way of doing that, you can't first decide on your strategy on dealing with projects and then go and then look into the needs. Rather, you need to first see what the project needs. Who are your stakeholders? What kind of objectives you have? What is the timeline for this project? And then gradually look into other needs for this project, for that particular project, and that's tailoring thing that on PMBOK or many other project management sources you've seen as well. That's how we can do a better job. But even if we don't want to talk about this, which is not the main purpose, I've added this hierarchy of needs here. Like Maslow has another masterpiece as a quote, which actually is the basis of this presentation. So this quote, this fantastic quote, which says, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see all problems as a nail, was the basis of creating and deciding to present this presentation. Isn't it like that? If you only have one tool, how can you solve different problems effectively? Are you not going to deal with every and each problem by using that tool? Is it going to be effective? For sure not. This is a very tangible example. You can clearly see that it's not. But isn't it like the same thing when you have only just, you're so fanatic to one development approach and you want to solve and implement every and each project by using that sole development approach that you've been working on for other projects. So again, this is the basis of our discussion today. But what we do in project environments is going to finally add value to the customer. No matter what the development approach we take, no matter what we do, at the end of the day, we want to ensure that the customer is served with the right products or services or results. Let's watch this video. It's a little bit like, I just want to make it a little bit fun, but oops, technical issues. That way. You don't want to do like that. It doesn't matter if you're doing incremental project management or like providing your customer with early and frequent products or whatever. You need to ensure that the quality is in place. You need to ensure that you have planned in advance. All the risks have been looked into and you've assessed the risks for your project. Honorable Janet Austin well mentioned today that risk management is the key to all projects. So again, depending on the project requirements, depending on the complexity, the timeline, who the customer is, the focus of the project, the priorities of the project, you need to do different types of risk management. So again, these factors force us to first look into the details of the project to see what we need to do before we really decide on the development approach. Some samples of development approaches, as many of you know, are like plan-driven development approach. So that is for a time that you really need a lot of time to plan ahead of time when there are big risks that you can identify for your project. So you don't want to get there. Normally, government type projects, infrastructure, or maybe construction type of projects need to go that way. Change-driven projects are the ones that the customers really want to learn as they go, just like progressively elaborate on the project. So they still want to have that flexibility and luxuriness of being able to change the scope of the project. And finally, time-driven projects, when time is really the constraint for your project. So you just want to ensure that everything is in place. Like that is for smaller projects, minor software implementation, or just changing to some software projects. Again, learning all of these is just like having a lot of different tools, knowing how to use them, but the more important thing is that knowing when to use those tools. I always talk about project management, especially when I teach, which I'm not doing now here, is like I simulate project managers to, or let's say the project environments to a workshop, a mechanical workshop. When you go there, you see a lot of tools on the wall, including hammers, screwdrivers, drills, wrenches, and a lot of other tools that I don't know the names even. But that technician, that person in charge, not only has acquired the tools, not only knows how to use them, but the key is that they know exactly when to pick which to solve what problem in a more effective way, or in the most effective way. So that is where I want to go by providing this presentation. Same thing should be applicable to project management. We have a lot of different things. Like conflict management, we have 5 different responses, or let's say strategies in dealing with conflicts. You can avoid conflicts, you can accommodate, you can collaborate, you can compromise, right? or you can compete. So what is the right approach in conflict management? Many recruiters that ask actually that question, or hiring managers ask that question from project management like candidates. And the answer to me is not a mere sold answer. We all know that collaboration is a great thing to have and to do. But sometimes as a project manager, you need to pick that hammer. You need to compete. You need to really do that, because if that's not the case, so why do we need to have all those tools and techniques in place? So consciously deciding and choosing what to do in what circumstance is the key to a project manager's success, and that's how we can be different from others in dealing with project environments. So when we want to choose the right development approach, there are a lot of different things that you need to look into. From the complexity and the scope of your project, the basic needs of the project, what is really the result that you're going to provide, and then the other thing is the time. Are we restricted by the time? Do you really need a very fast, implementation, and then just to go to the market and to ensure that we're going to be there before our competitors? Then we might not necessarily need to complete the whole scope of the work. As soon as we are there, our name is out there, we're going to be successful. So that's another thing. And then the size and the scalability of your project, the size of your project. Is it really a project that needs to be managed in an agile team based on the agile mindset, philosophy, fundamentals and frameworks, or not? And finally, at the end, the team. Do we have enough resources? Are they really in line with our the development approach selection? Do they have enough skills? Have they been able to build the relationship with them? Is trust built in that team? What kind of different personality types do we have in that team? Are they coming from a dominant personality? Are they more stable? Are they more compliant or influencing? This personality type of thing. So there are a lot of things that you need to look into. And when I look at this, to be honest with you, I see Maslow's hierarchy kind of here. Again, if you want to go to that top level, to be the best of yourself, to be the best project manager, you need to start from the scratch. You need to look into the physiological needs, the basic needs in this case, and then gradually get into higher aspects of how to deal with the project. And then at last, you need to know how to influence people, right? So the way that you want to influence people and deal with persuasion and all those soft skills that a project manager needs to show depends a lot on the timeline of your project, depends a lot on the complexity of your project, depends a lot on the development approach that you have taken. Are you really co-located in one place? So do you have the chance to use in-person communication so we can more effectively influence? There are a lot of tools out there for influence model. Cohen Bradford is one of them, so you can follow that. But again, you need to know what is required, to what level. And that's when we talk about communications management. How do you want to do the same thing in terms of communications management when you do agile versus another development approach? They are different. The way that you need to deal with them are different. And as you know, communication is not just talking, sending emails, inviting people to meetings, going to meetings. It's just about how, using what media, what channel of communication, when, and to what levels of detail that is critical, that's so important. To what level of details do you need to provide information to your people? So let's say you're doing Agile/Scrum, and you meet with your team on a daily basis. So what details, what level of details do you want to dig into in a Scrum meeting or daily Scrum or daily stand-up meeting versus when you do a lot of planning in advance and then you want to update your team about the revisions that you have in your plan. So again, looking into this as a basis of development approach selection would help us before putting on a label here that I'm an agile, or our team is an agile team. looking into that would help to consciously select what development approach would best serve and would be the best match for this project. There are other things like that. There are other ways to look into what criteria needs to be taken into consideration when you want to think about agile versus waterfall. For example, these are just not, you can find a lot of different things, but the main common ones are that, for example, if your scope is fixed, but you're more flexible in terms of time and resources, waterfall might be a better approach, right? So if you exactly know that the scope of the work is fixed and you cannot, or you're not willing to change that a lot, but the time and resources are more manageable and more flexible than waterfall. Versus when time and resources are kind of fixed, you need to go with a time boxed type of like delivery of your project, just like over iterations or sprints, then the scope of the work should be flexible. You cannot change all of them at once, so you need to fix some to be able to play with the other pillars to make this balance happen, and finally to be able to deliver projects as per your customers' requirements. Both development approaches, the main actually development approaches in one shot. As you can see, the traditional / predictive / waterfall project management is stage over stage. So you first need to do some planning and then design what you've planned for, and then implement that, and then test it, and then deliver that, and pass it over to operations for maintenance or whatever. That's what we've always heard about project management, traditional project management. That's what we have heard about waterfall, that they are like, phases. You need to get out of one phase to be able to do another phase. I'm going to talk about it in a while. But this picture here shows the agile, especially and specifically this one is going to show Scrum, that you iteratively and incrementally deliver your new features and new values to your customer. They can test it, use it, and then during the next iteration or the next time box, you add more features and more values. The good thing about this is that you don't need to wait for a long time for the whole project to be delivered at once. Rather, customer can benefit from the minimum viable products. I don't want to go with the definitions of agile, but just like the minimum thing that they can make value out of before the next feature is added, and then next feature is added, and next feature is added. So this is what we have heard about the difference between agile and waterfall. But one thing which I believe is a myth about waterfall or traditional project management is that people don't normally focus on the fact that we're not going to write our plans on stone. Even in traditional project management, we need to progressively elaborate what we do. We have lessons learned, and then we gradually change our plans. So monitoring and controlling is not something that is per stage. Rather, it's something that is going to be done over the whole course of the project life cycle. So if there is anything that needs to be changed, you can go back and change it. If you have defined a scope, and after some time, for whatever reason, let's put it that way. If you identified a risk, not at the beginning of the project, let's say 6 months to the project, you identify a new risk. You do your risk management, your risk assessment, you perform qualitative analysis, you perform quantitative risk analysis, you do plan risk responses, and then as a result, you decide to avoid that risk. Because you cannot afford to accept the risk, you cannot afford to mitigate that, you don't want to, for whatever reason, escalate the risk, and you don't want to go with any transfer or mitigation or whatever response risk sets. You just want to avoid that. Doesn't it mean that you need to go back and change your plan? So the scope is going to change. If that risk is going to impact your scope of work and your deliverables, and you consciously decide to avoid that risk, it means that you have to go back, you need to look into your schedule, you need to look into your scope, into your budget, and change everything and move forward. So what I'm kind of a little bit nervous about is that when people talk about traditional project management, they don't bold or flag the positive aspect of going waterfall project management, that like traditional project management. That no, it's not that you have to plan for 6 months and then close it and then lock it. No one can change it and then go start and implement until you deliver something. That is not the case. While I believe that there's a lot of value in doing agile, but I still see value in going waterfall if that is better than agile for your specific project, right? So again, that myth should have been addressed that I tried to kind of talk about. But yeah, so let me know, when is the best time to do waterfall? When the scope of the work could be like identified, at least a high level scope of the work could be identified in advance. Or when clients have less ability or tendency to change the scope of the work. Just like a big construction project, when you do the blueprints and designs and everything, yeah, there might be some minor changes, but why should you change that? Like, many people talk about traditional project management in a way that it's not good because you cannot change. But sometimes you really don't need to change. Why should you change something that doesn't need to be changed? So why should you go that way and let your stakeholders send a lot of change requests and mistake collaboration with chaos, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, by asking, by sending a lot of change requests and creating trouble and problem for you. If your design is concrete, is solid, you know what you're doing, why not just going forward and implementing that? And of course, when you want to do agile, the projects that are like eligible, or let's say deserve to be dealt with in an agile manner, are the ones that you want to do a rapid production of a minimum, version of your product, like a website. You don't want to add everything to the website and then release that. As soon as you have your domain and then you have your host and then you have a lot of a little bit of information about yourself, about us, you can launch your website, you can create your business card, you can create your email address. Then during the next iteration, go and add more products, go and add more features, and the next iteration more and more. So for these projects, yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. And I'm okay if you add a big sign on the top of your PMO entrance door and say you're agile. If all of your projects are like that, then that's okay. But I'm assuming that many PMOs deal with different types of projects. Not all of them are the ones that there is no very clear picture of the final deliverable, and that's why that you just want to create something minimal, deliver that, see if it works or not, and then add more features. There are a lot of projects that the project team and the stakeholders and the customers have a clear picture on what the deliverables are. But the thing is that, let's assume that you have consciously decided, chosen, selected to be agile, to go agile. Because the nature of your projects are agile, your stakeholders have discussed that, and you decided to go agile. These questions are very important. You need to ensure that you have the support, adequate support from your senior management. Do you really know what agile is? Do they know agile the same as what you know? Are you on the same page? Because different people have different interpretations about agile. Some people see agile only as an environment that you can just change. Let's change. Change again. No commitment. You need to make sure that your stakeholders are not those stakeholders who just want to go agile because they want, and they have loud voices sometimes, some of them, and they want to change everything. You don't want to go that way. Also, they need to know that collaboration is not chaos. So yeah, we have heard that in Agile, we need to pay attention to collaboration more than documentation, for example. But collaboration does not mean that your stakeholders can poke their nose into every aspect of your project. The project team should be a self-managed, self-organized team. They should have the authority to decide. No one should interrupt them once the decisions are made, right? So, and there is a myth again, like the same myth about traditional project management. There is one for Agile. Many people think that in Agile you don't need to plan. No, don't plan, just go ahead and do the job. That is not the case. Even in Agile, we need to plan and we need to maintain our commitment to the plan, right? So when a decision is being made, at least for the next iteration, please don't change the scope of the work. So what I mean by that, and like, do they really understand Agile, is that the interpretations, the way that people understand Agile are different, and you need to ensure as the project manager that they know that. Do you have a product owner? I have seen a lot of teams and organizations who pretend that they're doing Agile. But when you ask about the roles, they have a project manager, and then they have a director, and then they have, there is no roles and responsibilities like Agile. I don't want to be like so strict on necessarily going with Scrum Master and Product Owner and Development team, but I talk about the role. The role of Product Owner or a customer proxy, the person who has enough authority, adequate authority to decide and to guide the project team is critical. But again, sadly, based on my experience, I've seen in many organizations, because they know that this team is Agile, this food team is going to be Agile, then everyone just throw change requests to them, and they have to just change. They decide on something, the day after, they change it. So the level of confidence in that team would be impacted. The teams cannot be a self-motivated, self-organized, self-managed teams, because you need to give them the flexibility and the authority to decide and do the job the way they want. Remember that we all have been told about the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated. But that is not going to work in many situations. You need to deal with people the way they would want to be treated. You can't just decide and interpret and create, a myth about Agile or traditional project management, and then follow that approach and expect others to follow you and expect to be successful. So again, these are the things that are very important in project environments, but you don't need to wait until those happen and then see if it works or not. You can just see the symptoms. As soon as you notice that someone is responding back to you like this, especially if that person is your sponsor, your customer, your product owner, you know what? This is so important, but sorry, I'm so busy, I can't meet with you until the next week. That has happened to me. I've had sponsors in my projects, and that project has been supposed to go Agile, and I have like timelines, and I have communicated with my teams, and have got their commitment, but I can't get hold of the sponsor. Should I just waste the time and not work, or should I proceed? You proceed, and then once you can get hold of the sponsor, they don't accept the deliverables, and you have to go and do it again. That is not only about rework. Your team will be pissed off. Your team is not going to trust you as a project manager anymore. So again, that's what I mean by the fact that you need to have buy-in, and you need to have that sort of alignment from all your stakeholders, and they need to be trained adequately about what you're going to do or what kind of Agile. Again, I'm not a fanatic person towards Scrum or Lean or Kanban or XP. No, whatever makes sense for you, just go and do that, and that's what I prefer. But just get the agreement. Ensure that everyone is on the same page. They know the rules of the game. That is the key. If they know the rules of the game, then it's just like creating a ground rules from scratch, so everyone gets committed to that. And then once you follow that plan, which again you can go back and revise whenever you want, you will be successful. But if different people with different mindsets, with different understandings about Agile want to do Agile, it's going to be a mess. The other symptom or signal that can tell you that it's not going to work is that your developer tells you, you know what, I'm a developer, I'm a C type of person I just want to focus on developing and coding. Why should I attend all these meetings? Again, that's the rule of the game. So these are the things that could tell you that your team are not yet ready for that new journey. Their mindset is not yet set for Agile. That's why we say Agile is not a methodology, Agile is not a framework, Agile is not a technique. Rather, it's a mindset, it's a philosophy. And people need to get to that point to understand what good looks like for them when they deal with projects. So we are an Agile team. Why should we plan? Let's just do the work. That is another thing that happens. Because they have heard, not that they are educated, not they have been trained adequately, they have heard that in Agile, you don't need to plan ahead of time a lot. You just do the job, and iteratively and adaptively and incrementally, you can add more value. They think that there is no planning. Not planning means not committing to some rules. That is a big risk. If you heard that, just be careful. That is a huge risk. If you have a risk register with probability and impact, I don't want to talk about probability, but add the maximum impact to this risk if you identify that as a risk. Because that's going to create real chaos for your project. We are an Agile team. Why should we not be able to make changes whenever we want? Again, changes are okay. Changes are the mother of innovation. Changes are everything. But you shouldn't make changes anytime you want. So once we commit to something, once the work is being offered to the developers and the development team, let them do the job. If there is a huge risk and huge change, of course, but just letting everyone, poke your team members and ask them to make changes, it's not a great thing to do. And finally, roles and responsibilities. Again, because Agile is kind of different from traditional project management, that boundaries are not clarified. And I have done some research, and I have noticed that the main problem, the main challenge in project environments is the fact that roles and responsibilities are not clarified. I can talk for 3 hours about this. Trust starts from here. Trust and lack of trust. Because when you're not clear about roles and responsibilities, you might not do what you're supposed to do, and you might do some things that you're not supposed to do. Either way, you're going to impact the team members. Either way, you're going to make them pissed off. Either way, you're going to, create demotivated team members. And we all know why team members leave the organizations. It's not necessarily about salary. It's not necessarily about, the workload. They leave because of people. What about people? Their height, their color, hair color or something? No, their behavior. And roles and responsibilities is one of the key areas that if you're not careful about in your Agile team or waterfall team, any teams, that could create real problems for your project environments. You all have heard about the race between the rabbits and turtle, right? Has anyone not heard that before? I know you've heard that, or you've watched some videos. Let's watch this video. I'm going to pause after a sec, talk a little bit, and then continue. You can assume that the rabbit is the agile person, and then the turtle is the waterfall. Just look at it like that.
Once upon a time, a turtle and a rabbit had an argument about who was faster. They decided to settle the argument with a race. The turtle and the rabbit both agreed on a route and started off the race. The rabbit shot ahead and ran briskly for some time. Then, seeing he was far ahead of the turtle, he thought he'd sit under a tree for some time and relax before continuing the race. He sat under the tree and soon fell asleep. The turtle, plodding on, overtook him and soon finished the race. Emerging as the undisputed champ, the rabbit woke up and realized that he'd lost the race. The moral of the story is that slow and steady wins the race.
Okay, do you know the next step? So many of us have heard the first part, but the story does not end there. On round 2, the turtle challenges the rabbit to do it again. Sorry, the rabbit challenges the turtle to do it again. And because of the historical information and the previous experience, this time the rabbit knows that he has lost the game because he was just lax, and he was overconfident and he take it for granted. So apparently, since the awareness is now raised and the rabbit knows what the problem is, he addresses the problem and he wins the game. No wonder. But it's not yet the end of the story. Another time, the turtle challenges the rabbit, but this time on a kind of different route. There is a river in the route. So the rabbit now knows from the previous experience that he needs to be agile, he needs to be fast. He runs away, he starts very quickly, but once he gets to that barrier, which really needs another mindset, another tool, another way of dealing with problems, he can't do anything. The turtle comes slowly and then swims and finally wins the game. But the story is not finished yet. There is one more level, which I'm more of a fan of this type of
The story
mindset.
still hasn't ended. The turtle and rabbit by this time had become pretty good friends, and they did some thinking together. Both realized that the last race could have been run much better. So the turtle and rabbit decided to do the last race again, but to run as a team this time. They started off, and this time the rabbit carried the turtle till the riverbank. There, the turtle took over and swam across with the rabbit on his back. On the opposite bank, the rabbit again carried the turtle, and they reached the finishing line together. Both the turtle and rabbit felt a greater sense of satisfaction than they felt earlier. The moral of the story? It's good to be individually brilliant and to have strong core competency.
Okay, so yeah, that's the point. Why should we just, again, be fanatic about just being fast? Once you really need another tool, because there's a river, and for being able to pass a river, you need a different tool. Same thing for project management. In many projects, we don't really need to do agile. Agile is one mindset, one way of doing project management. Waterfall is another way. Prince 2 is another way. And there are a lot of different things. I personally tend to go hybrid. I don't want to label myself as an agile person or waterfall person. Like when I was working with TELUS last year, I'm still with TELUS. I'm going to move on to BCC as per the introduction by the end of this month. But I'm still working as a senior PM with TELUS. We had a switch migration project in one of the central offices with 20,000 customers on it. Should I have gone agile or waterfall? That's a huge project with a lot of risks. Absolutely, I needed to do a lot of planning ahead of time to ensure everything is set in place. We needed to onboard a third party, and we needed to go through procurement and all those selection criteria, and then deciding on the plans and the number of lines that needed to be migrated per day. A lot of restrictions, for example, only 2 hours in the morning for business lines because we couldn't touch the business lines as they are businesses and work during the day. So we could only migrate the lines for 2 hours versus residentials because people normally tend to go to work during the day and it's less. So it's a lot of planning. But when we did that, for our daily migration, we did agile. So we created the whole plan. We followed all the approaches and tools and techniques to do agile, to do waterfall. But when I wanted to do a daily, work schedule, I had daily meetings. Scrum says that Daily stand-up meetings is just for 15 minutes, right? And you should all stand up. You should stand up. You can't sit. You all need to be co-located in one place. Do we really need that? What is the main purpose of that? Isn't it to be in touch and in collaboration and in close communication with your team to ensure that you're aware of any impediments, any roadblocks, any problems, and you need to ensure that people are aware of their day of plan. Why should we just sit? Why 15 minutes? Sometimes, so I used to do that in a waterfall environment, but my meetings sometimes used to go for 5 minutes because it was all good news, nothing to hold on people for more than that. And sometimes when there was a risk or there was a problem or issue, we needed to talk more. And so we used to extend the meeting. Sometimes, for example, on Wednesdays, for whatever reason, I canceled the meeting. We don't need to do every day. So what I mean by that is, as long as we know what tools are available, and we have educated ourselves to know how to use the tools, then the only thing that remains, which of course I think is 80% of the problem, is to ensure that you pick the right tool when you want to solve the problem. You cannot pick a fork and eat soup. Fork is important, but a spoon is needed for that, right? So ultimately, getting back to Abraham Maslow's fantastic quote, if the only tool that you have is hammer, you're going to see all the problems as nails. And that's not where we want to go as project managers. Instead of that, we can have a toolbox of several different tools and techniques. And we need to acquire them. We need to learn them. We need to know how to use them. Of course, hammer is one of them. But hammer is only one of the tools in that big toolbox. It could be leveraged and applied at the right time, at the right place, when you consciously decide on your project development approach. Thank you so much for your time, for your patience, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Yes, please.
So PMI just recently made a major thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Eddie. I'm from the city of Richmond. PMI just made a major acquisition, Discipline Agile, and also Flex.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could comment a little bit about your thoughts around those and how it will change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually during the conference, the Philadelphia LIM 2019, as Rosemary, our president, mentioned, I had a chance to meet with Sunil, the president and CEO of PMI Global, and also the chair of the board of directors, and we talked about that a little bit. So that is the need. Like, PMI was going to be set at the corner and to be kind of accused by just being waterfall and traditional project management. Where while we had Agile certifications like PMI-ACP is one of the certifications in Agile, that is a very great certification and you learn a lot. It's just general Agile project management. But PMI as a business project management organization realized that need, and that's why they decided to acquire that the disciplined Agile organization to ensure that they work on both sides of project management, Agile, very structured, disciplined Agile, to be able to scale the Agile mindset in different levels, like the scale Agile framework, team level, product level, program level, large scale and portfolio level, and of course the focus would be on PMBOK. However, even in PMBOK, you already have seen that there are some Agile kind of pastes that are injected to tailoring the project, and that's what I was talking about. So if you look at PMBOK 6, and you want to find the differences between PMBOK 6 and the PMBOK 5, well, one of the differences is that we have 47 processes now, we have 49. For example, for risk management, we did not have an executing process that is implement risk responses. Now we do. We did not have a resource management knowledge area. We have HR management knowledge area, something like that. But the main like, I can say philosophical change to PMBOK is that some agile flavor has been added to that. So acquiring that business or that the disciplined agile initiative was in line with PMI's strategic changes, especially after Sunil came to it was in March 2019 that he joined PMI. So he's made a lot of changes, including the branding things and also getting into a new business and combining that with traditional project management. So that's a good thing to know, and they're doing well. I really am happy with what PMI Global is doing. Okay, thank you again, and have a lovely afternoon. So I will be here until tomorrow, so I would be more than happy to meet with you guys and talk more and learn from you